This is Lessons Learned, and I'm your host, Matt Kennard, CEO of Better Lesson. Join me as we dig in with visionary state and district level leaders who share our mission to support every K-12 educator in developing the next generation of resourceful, compassionate, and resilient learners. Lessons Learned is brought to you by Better Lesson. Let's get started. Today on Lessons Learned, I've pulled 5 of our most inspirational moments so far from season 2. From leaning full tilt into workforce alignment to decentralizing professional learning, these are the moments I'm still thinking about. Practices I hope that you'll be inspired to steal and use in your classrooms, in your districts, in your buildings. We really hope you enjoy.
I am one of the rare people who will tell you that this is education's finest moment if we seize it. I think in front of us right now, we have to lean into the fact that 88% of the children in the United States of America attend a public education. And I think public education, despite the narrative, does an amazing job producing citizens who are prepared for what's next. The system itself, though, is at a crossroads. And the question is, do we have the courage right now as a group of leaders, as a system nationwide, statewide, and locally, to lean into the fact that we don't do this alone, but we have to do this for kids in the future, and it's right now. There's a million things right now that I could be doing, but the most important work I'm going to be doing is impacting the teaching and learning in classroom and vision. So I choose that. When things get a little uncertain, you've got to lean into the core values of the organization. You've got to lean into that shared vision, because that brings us back together and orients us back to where we need to be. And so my job is to not create the panic at the top, to not send the alarm bells off throughout the system. It's to create a steady focus on assuring that this district and this community is going to lead the way in this conversation. And we'll find a way. Like, that's how the design process is intended to work. When a challenge is in front of you, you got to design again. And so I've been overwhelmed by this community in my first 2 years. They are ready, they are engaged, and our students are amazing. And so why wouldn't we work hard to make sure that we get it right for them, right? And set them up on this path. Resources are limited. But if you think from a mindset of adding more without thinking about addition by subtraction first, then you're missing the boat, right? You always add more people, but I think in this environment, it's think differently about the resources that you have, right? And so we have those conversations now as we move into this next chapter for education.
It seems like a really good way to start thinking about increasing motivation for kids to say, hey, not only am I going to get a general education, because everyone says a general education, but it actually becomes a pathway to things that I really want to do with my day and my life, and they matter to me. It feels like a conversation that's been long overdue, and I'm excited to see it. And I can imagine for you growing up in a small town, getting that type of exposure to what that could bring you, show you within your state or elsewhere would have been like a really interesting thing to have in your mind as you're going through sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Yeah, I was one of those students that it was really hard for me to take what I viewed as sort of these abstract concepts. And again, I'll just leave it in particular to math and science, because those were the areas that I probably struggled with the most. And, thinking, how do I take, what I'm learning in algebra and thinking about how I apply that to some real life practical situation. And it was something that was a cognitive disconnect for me, just didn't make sense. And I couldn't understand the practical applications of that. So I think, more and more, we're creating opportunities. There's some great things that are happening. You're seeing people model different technologies in the classroom of how to use virtual reality tools and other things and take these algebraic, equations and applying them to a real life situation while they're sitting there in the classroom learning, and they don't even have to leave to be able to do that. So even the things that have been technology enabled, it's fascinating, the opportunities that are in front of kids. And I think being able to equip our educators with the tools to talk to them again early on, career exploration, thinking about what are the things that not only interest you, but what's the quality of life that you want to have? And, sort of how you reverse engineer what the future could look like and what you want into the type of profession that interests you, that could provide you with the income and the quality of life that you want to be able to do those types of things. and what's the education you need to get there, and finding that in all instances, it doesn't take, a 4-year degree, and trying to force everybody into that, a square peg into a round hole, just doesn't work. And so I applaud, the state for having these conversations. It's not without its difficulty, because we feel from a district and ESC level and the groups that represent them, as though the policy grounds are sort of always shifting, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate that the right way. But I like to believe that everybody's going into this with the right end in mind. That while we disagree on the policy sometimes, what we're trying to get to as a state that has a great, proud history in manufacturing and agribusiness, but is having to shift towards healthcare and technology, and some of those other things, or at least thinking about how technology enables all these other industries, that we're all trying to go to the same place. And I think
Absolutely.
the more that we can focus on that, the more we can get consensus around the right policies.
At Better Lesson, we think a lot about building resilient students, right? And part of building resilient students is giving them opportunities to show vulnerability. And one of those areas of vulnerability for kids, particularly when you think about kids going middle and high school, is being honest about the things that they're interested in doing and having honest conversations about what's available. We talk to a lot of districts around how are you aligning your pathways for students also to the high wage, high available jobs that are available. How do you help kids see a pathway where they can say, I can do that. I can build a life for myself that's based on that pathway. And it's of interest to me, that to me is the ultimate goal of education. How do you help someone see through their education and ability to achieve a life that they're proud of, a life that makes them valuable contributors to themselves, their families, and their communities? And I think to a certain extent, when we lose vision of the student, we lose vision of helping them get to that place.
1,000%, 1,000%. And that's why I think that when we look at CTE, there are a lot of great models for bringing CTE into schools, for setting up, and that core CT model, let me just say, for those who might not know, that core CT model is that you're building pathways to employment by introducing special classes that are CTE classes around construction or around agriculture or communications or business, and building the relationships with the industries and with the colleges so that they can get certifications and get jobs. But if the students aren't jumping into those paths, if they're not seeing how they connect their own personal interests with those paths, or it starts to, we don't get the engagement level that we need. And what we're finding is that even the unions that are showing up or the employers that are showing up, the students aren't even able to have the conversations that they need to with them. And that's huge. If a student can't even say if they're in a CTE program, or if they're dual enrolled, which is something we're finding, that the opportunity really presents itself to introduce more comprehensive career exploration programming next to and in front of that CTE programming. And so I really want to emphasize that I think there's an incredible opportunity if we can introduce programs, whether it's EYP or something else, that really gets students thinking about who are they, how do they fit into the world, what is it that they want to do, and documenting their interests so that we can surface that as insights. We can use that for our CTE achievements, we can use that for grants. We can use that for reporting on our progress and for making better decisions about where to invest the money that's so precious to these school systems.
A lot of these conversations start in sixth grade, families and students, and being able to show those pathways, helps people make really good choices. I think it also helps us think about, do we have sometimes too many pathways or places where kids get lost versus saying, hey, we're going to move you down. And I think that to me comes down to also how we're thinking about recruiting and training educators. And, I want to turn to you for a minute on this, Kirsten. As a master teacher, and I think both Brett and Kyle talked about it, the classroom's changing. The expectations are changing and the needs are changing. As a master teacher who's thinking about either helping to induct new teachers in or thinking about change behavior or practice. How is this kind of new push towards college and career? And I like that emphasis on the and, changing the way maybe y'all are thinking about it. And what is the role that professional learning plays for you as you think about supporting educators in that lift?
I think it's important that when we're supporting our school-based instructional coaches and master teachers, that what they're delivering in their professional learning can be applied to any subject area. Not necessarily does it have to be an ELA, or reading or a writing strategy. You can write in all of those areas, and they can just apply it to any subject area, making sure they're just truly focusing on good, best teaching practices, regardless of what the skill is. Even if it's our CTE teachers, they are still teaching our students to learn how to do something. So I think just continuously supporting our instructional coaches and master teachers, just focusing on best practices, has been our best leverage with this.
I love that. And just to press on that a little bit more, I think that sometimes we think about professional learning as one-off, right? We do a workshop, we do, we coach one person, but it sounds like you're really thinking about it from a systems perspective. Like, how do we move that system forward? How have you approached that mindset shift? I'll start with Kirsten, please. If Brett and Tyler jump in. How have you approached that mindset shift? Because I think, especially when you're a smaller district, you're thinking about allocation of resources, right? Where are those high value places, and how do you make system-wide change versus kind of little pockets of change?
I think the biggest change we made as a district was when we shifted to each school campus getting the position of a master teacher / instructional coach on their campus. So there was someone on their campus to provide that very generalized professional learning. And those instructional leadership teams started digging into the data and really looking at a trend across the campus that majority of their staff would benefit from learning and doing as a whole group. But this person also does provide some individualized coaching based on individual teacher needs as well as an additional support. I think that's where we made a really big change, and keeping this very generalized for our teachers.
So you can go deep or broad as needed.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense.
So we started off at the district level with an idea, Kirsten and I, when we began. We have a new teacher orientation every year. And so 2 years ago, we said, we need to follow up with these new teachers. We had the new orientation, give them an abundance of new things that they're learning and have to take care of. And then we're like, okay, have a great year. See you later. And we wanted to change that. So her and I tried to set up monthly follow-ups, send surveys out to see what did they need. And of course, her and I have other duties other than just new teacher. And once her and I started on this, we were like, okay, we're not giving it justice. We need to do something. And that's when we realized each individual teacher needed something different than the other, even ones that were on the same campus. So that is when we started looking at, different avenues. And when Better Lesson came along, it was just an aha moment, because it gave, not only the, exceptional in-person workshops, but that personal one-on-one coaching, that these teachers have, and they don't feel like they're bothering someone on their campus, because that new teacher, we all remember that we don't want to bother anybody, and we don't want to let anybody know that we don't really know the answer to everything. And so it's their avenue to be able to reach out to somebody that they feel comfortable with, to admit that they're struggling, and to have someone that is experienced in their area to assist them through the way.
Really, the schools know what their teachers need the best. So rather than a top-down approach where we're dictating from the district level, oh, you guys need to focus on these skills, we're going from the bottom up in how letting them at the school level inform how we support them from the district level. So what do your teachers need? Specifically, what do your students need? Because your teacher needs and your student needs are aligned, right? So A big shift that we did during COVID was implementing across the board ongoing professional development. And that's a lot of the work that Kirsten leads with supporting the master teachers of each teacher, it doesn't matter what you're teaching, is receiving ongoing professional development at the school level through their master teachers, through their instructional leadership team members. So it's to your point, it's not just a one-off, hey, thanks for coming and we'll see you in 30 years when you retire. It's, you know, we're checking to make sure that these teachers are continually, they're being the lead learners in their own classrooms.
You're now the director of CTE in your district. Talk to me a little bit about some of the innovative models that you all have brought in, because I know workforce partnerships are something that you've really tried to prioritize in the work. I'm guessing because of some of your own experiences and seeing how that interaction with the real world actually can help shape and form a lot of opinions on what you want to do. And that almost never happens for high school students. Especially Regency Mall. Tell us about it.
Partnerships are key to the success, I think, of anything. If you think about what we do in life, if someone tells you to do something, you feel like you have to. But if someone's doing it with you, then you become part of that. And every business partner out there that we have is very eager to hire our young people. And they used to come to me all the time, like, I want to get in front of young people. And I'm like, look, if we're talking to them would fix the problem, we do that 6.5 hours a day, problem solved. But you need to get involved and come in and do this with us. And I can give you several examples of how we have done that. But what I've found is the power of involving the partnerships starts off with first their definition of partnership. Most school divisions will think of a partnership as, hey, we're getting ready to start a new team and we need jerseys. And if you give me $3,000, we'll buy the jerseys. I'll put your name on the back and you can be one of our business partners. Well, yes, that's very, very nice. But my definition of a partnership, that's a handout. And we like to think of a partnership as a handshake. And we have a philosophy in Henrico County. It's really kind of worked in my favor. But at first I was thinking, boy, something must be wrong with me because I will never ask for anything. It's just I'm not going to go to you and say, hey, could you help us out? I will come to you and say, look, I've got young people. They're looking for opportunities. They want to work for your company. Can we figure out how I can help you? And then that growth, that partnership, I like to say it's like a perfect marriage. It's a 60-40 relationship. If both people are giving 60% of the time and expecting 40, you end up with 120%. And you're far better off than you thought you were going to be to start with. So we've done a number of projects, but you mentioned the Regency Mall project. We took a 48,000 square foot of a mall and turned it into an adult education center. Now there's so many different stories that I could go into. Number one, why put the adult ed in a mall? And I want to touch that real quick. Number one, if you're an adult and you're dropped out of school or you need to go back to school, we send you to the place that you hated to start with and expect you to be successful. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to go on a diet but you're going to be in a bakery every day. It doesn't work, so we wanted to create a place that the adult felt comfortable and like they were moving forward in life. And then to put it in a mall, you think about a mall, you go shopping. And just like you said in high school, everybody, we don't want our kids to graduate college and career ready from high school anymore. We want them to graduate enrolled, enlisted, and or employed. We want them to know what their why is. So why wouldn't that be any different for the adult world? So we wanted to create a place where the adults came in, not just seeking a GED or English as a second language, but their why and what they're going to do next with it. So we put it in a mall, kept the storefronts of the mall. And if you think about a storefront, the whole purpose of a storefront is to advertise. So we're advertising careers. And as you walk into our mall, you're walking by careers all the time. And it's like in a store, you walk by and you see something that one day you look at it the first time, walk by it again, 3 or 4 times later, you go in the store and you buy it because that's the whole concept. So the whole concept of the mall is have the adults see their future. Now, to build this out was a very unique challenge. We had 48,000 square foot that we had to demo it out, design it, and turn it into a classroom space. So we, using their partnerships, which really became key to this, we're able to do this in 10 months. And if you think about time, that's a pretty quick span. But let me give you an example of how partnerships play into this. I think one of the most significant opportunities we had, there were 261 sprinkler heads in that 48,000 foot space that had to be moved. And if you think about sprinkler heads, you can't touch them. It's life safety. You got to be certified. You got to be 18 to be certified. So kids never know. Only thing they know about, I joke about it, the only thing they knew about sprinkler heads is you can't hang clothes on it when you're in a hotel. So, the industry itself has been dying to get young people excited about how do you get into the sprinkler fitting industry. So I went to they had a job fair. They had rented a section of a hotel, and they had some really neat displays there. And the American Fire and Sprinkler Association, they had a total of 28 people show up for that first sprinkler fair that they did. And I said, me and three of my colleagues were 4 of the people there. And so we were sitting there talking, and they said, we really want to get in front of young people. And so I said, have I got an opportunity for you? I've got 261 sprinkler heads. I'm not asking you to give me anything. Can you come in? Because the mall actually became our classroom. So I have kids touch it. And I said, but we've got to do it right. Will you come in, just show us how, watch your kids do it, and then certify we did the work? And they go, oh, we'd love to do that. And so from that day, with the 28 people showing up, they came in, worked with our kids. They fell in love with what we were doing in the school system. Then they started working with their vendors. They had all the parts donated. They donated time. They were in there for kids. We moved all those sprinkler heads. And at the end of the day, the return on their investment, we did a job fair for them a year later from the time they had the 28 kids. We did that actually at the mall, and they had over 200 kids show up.
My goodness. I love that idea of experiential learning, whether it's for adults who are trying to figure out what they want to do next, or, we don't trust kids enough sometimes. And we look at it and we say, well, that's, adult, it's for safety, it's sprinkler heads. But the reality is kids are hungry for opportunities, particularly those, a kid who's mechanically inclined wants to get a chance to actually try something out, to be trusted to do something that's that important. I mean, kids will rise to that occasion if you give them that experiential opportunity.
I joke about it all the time. And going back to when I was in high school, if a bus pulled up at a mall with 40 kids and the door open and said, y'all get off and go in the mall, how many of us would have been found where we're supposed to be? Every one of those kids got off the bus, went in the mall, got their hard hat, safety glasses, tools, and immediately went to work. And I think what was powerful with that, with the business partners that were helping us on this project, they saw our kids in a whole different light. And they saw, unfortunately, sometimes the news misrepresents our young people. And like you say, kids will do, if the expectation is A, they're going to do A. And so, this was a job site. This was, their classroom, and they loved coming to school. And now how powerful is that for a young person to say, I love coming to school?
That wraps another episode of the Lessons Learned podcast. Thank you for listening. For show notes and more about Better Lesson, please visit betterlesson.com/podcast. Lessons Learned is hosted by Better Lesson, the leading provider of data-driven, high-impact, system-wide K-12 teaching and learning solutions. We partner with states and districts to support every educator in developing the next generation of resourceful, compassionate, and resilient learners who are college and career ready. Our work has impacted more than 80,000 educators and nearly 3 million students nationwide. See you in the next episode.